Imagine for a moment stepping into the shoes of those who came before us. Welcome to a journey that transforms history into vibrant stories that captivate and inspire. The sun rises sluggishly over a vast, bleached horizon. Your boots crunch against a landscape that looks more like the inside of a furnace than anything hospitable. Dust kicks up with every footfall, powdering your eyelashes and grinding into the seams of your shirt. The smell of horse sweat over ripe leather and something vaguely rancid welcomes you to a place where civilization is clinging on by a thread. And honestly, you're not looking too fresh yourself. This is the Wild West, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And feel free to post your location and local time. I love seeing where my listeners are drifting off from. Wherever you are, I hope tonight brings you rest, comfort, and maybe a curious dream or two. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive on the edge of a sun-blistered settlement that locals generously call a town. It's really a few mismatched wooden shacks, a saloon with half a swinging door, a general store that sells more snake oil than anything useful, and a jail that doubles as the mayor's office on Thursdays. No one greets you, in fact, no one even looks up. Which is your first red flag. You're the outsider. And in this world that's roughly equivalent to wearing a sign that says, "Rob me, challenge me to a duel or both," you trudge into the saloon, your throat so dry it squeaks. There's a man passed out in the corner with a whiskey bottle balanced on his chest, and a bartender who seems to clean the same glass over and over again, just to avoid eye contact. You ask for water. He laughs. Not a friendly laugh, more like I'm debating whether to serve you or bury you kind of laugh. Water is more expensive than whiskey here, and considerably more dangerous. See, in towns like this, drinking water could land you in bed for a week if you're lucky. Cholera wasn't just a word from a dusty textbook here. It was a full-blown character in the community. Historians still argue whether towns like Deadwood or Tombstone ever had properly filtered water at all. One quirky traveler in 1875 wrote that his horse refused to drink the town's well water, and honestly, the horse had a point. You shuffle back outside, blinking against the punishing sunlight. Your clothes are already soaked through, mostly with sweat, partly with regret. The heat isn't just oppressive, it's personal. It wraps around you like a jealous lover refusing to let go. You think about finding shade, but shade is a luxury around here. Even the cacti look thirsty. One leans precariously over its spines, brittle as parchment. Your attempt at socializing with the townsfolk isn't going much better. A quick howdy is returned with suspicion. A narrowed gaze and one very visible hand drifting toward a holstered revolver. You remember reading something once about hospitality in frontier towns, but you're starting to realize that the books left out the whole "if you smile wrong you die" bit. Everyone's twitchy. Everyone's armed. Even the preacher carries a pistol under his cassock, and probably knows how to use it better than you. A child stares at you from behind a fence made entirely of mismatched wagon wheels. Her face is sunburnt, and her dress looks like it hasn't been washed since the gold rush began. She says nothing, just stares. You wave. She does not wave back. The tumbleweed blowing past offers more warmth. You think maybe you'll rent a room. Good luck. The only inn has a sign that reads "Beds available. 25 cents if you don't bleed on 'em." You're not entirely sure if it's a joke. Inside the room smell of mildew and dreams deferred. The mattress sags in the middle like it's trying to swallow itself. There's no pillow, just a lump of hay. You lie down anyway. Because you're not soft, you're brave. Or at least you thought you were. The night brings little relief. Coyotes yip and howl like unpaid opera singers. Your skin crawls with the sensation of unseen bugs discovering you're the new buffet in town. And the walls, if you can call them that, do nothing to keep out the neighbors' noises, which tonight include a drunken poker game, an enthusiastic barnyard animal, and someone tuning a banjo with the enthusiasm of a blacksmith. You try to sleep. You really do. But your brain keeps listing all the things that might kill you by dawn. Heat stroke, dehydration, a knife in the dark, or maybe tetanus from that rusty nail your bed frame is held together with. And then morning comes. You survive the night. Congratulations. But the Wild West isn't impressed. It's just getting started. The sun sneaks up earlier than you expected, piercing through the thin cracks of your wooden shutter like an uninvited spotlight. Your eyes snap open to a world already blistering beneath the relentless, cloudless sky. The heat presses down on you before you even have a chance to rise, wrapping around your bare skin like a suffocating blanket. It's as if the entire town is trapped inside a giant oven set to broil. You flop off the lumpy straw mattress with the grace of a sack of potatoes, instantly regretting the lack of softness underfoot. Your boots, if you can call them that, are stuffed full of coarse desert sand, an uninvited souvenir from the night's restless tossing and turning. The coarse grains grind mercilessly against your skin, with every step reminding you that the Wild West doesn't hand out comforts lightly. As you rub your aching eyes, you become aware of an unpleasant sensation crawling along your arm. You flick it away only to see a small mottled scorpion scuttle beneath the wooden floorboards. It had spent the night keeping you company, probably judging your lack of survival skills. This isn't your first encounter with the desert's less charming residents, but the way the scorpion moved so confidently as if it owned the place sends a shiver down your spine. You gingerly check your boots again, half expecting another six-legged menace to spring out at you. Surprise, surprise, they're full of grit and who knows what else. If you had any illusions of cleanliness, the sand and dust quickly obliterate them. Stepping outside into the morning, the heat hits you like a physical force. The sun isn't just rising, it's already raining supreme, casting harsh shadows and turning the air into something almost viscous. The horizon shimmers with heat waves, distorting the otherwise barren landscape. In the distance, a rattlesnake lazily coils on a rock, flicking its tongue as if mocking your clumsy intrusion into its domain. You remember reading that rattlesnake bites were responsible for more deaths in the frontier than gunfights, though historians still argue whether this was an exaggeration by settlers trying to romanticize the danger. One miner you'd heard about claimed he survived a bite by wrapping his arm in a rawhide strap and praying for days. Others swore by various snakebite remedies, some involving snake venom itself, which sounds about as effective as using gasoline to put out a fire. Speaking of questionable remedies, you wander toward the general store where the town's barber doubles as its dentist and makeshift doctor. The man who tends to your toothache carries a kit of tools that look like relics from the depth of a medieval torture chamber. Rusty pliers, bone saws, and a horrifyingly sharp-looking spatula thing that you hope never to experience. Rumor has it he once tried to set a broken leg with whiskey and sheer willpower. Historians still debate whether frontier medical care was truly worse than the rampant diseases, or just a creative version of desperate survival. Your gut tells you it's probably the latter. You shuffle into the store, greeted by the cloying smell of sweat tobacco, and something you can't quite place, maybe old leather or stale whiskey. The wooden floor creaks beneath your weight, drawing the attention of a few patrons who pause their hushed conversations to glance your way. You try to look confident, but the sensation of every pair of eyes on you only makes your palms sweat more. Hunger gnaws at your belly, so you ask for breakfast, half expecting a plate of cold beans and maybe some toughened bacon scraps. Your suspicions are confirmed as the barkeep slaps down a plate of what can only be described as gritty beans, swimming in a thin, greasy sauce. The spoon scrapes against the ceramic with a hollow sound. As you take your first bite, your teeth crunching through sand and whatever mysterious grit has found its way into the pot. The coffee arrives next, thick, black, and bitter enough to peel paint off the walls. You bring the cup to your lips with cautious optimism, but the first swallow tastes like burnt rubber. Yet it's better than nothing, and you gulp it down grateful for the warmth, despite its dubious flavor. Across the room, a man missing a couple of teeth and sporting a jagged scar sneers at you over the rim of his own cup. His gaze is sharp, calculating. You're clearly the outsider here, and his expression says you'd better watch your back. The general mood in the room is tense, like everyone's one wrong move away from a fist fight or worse. You realize quickly that the seemingly simple act of eating breakfast is more like navigating a minefield. You swallow hard and try to engage in small talk, but your words are met with grunts and sideways glances. You spot a rat darting under the counter, dragging a greasy morsel in its mouth like it owns the place. This little survivor is probably better adapted to this harsh environment than you are. If only you had half its cunning. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and the town's preacher storms in, waving a bottle of whiskey and shouting about sin and redemption. The paradox is striking. This man promises salvation, while brandishing the very liquid that's fueled more barroom brawls than any outlaw. Frontier medicine and faith are deeply intertwined here, often indistinguishable from each other. The preacher hands out shots of holy whiskey to anyone willing to accept, promising cures for everything from the flu to a broken heart. You wonder how many actually believe it, or if it's just another way to keep hope alive in a place where hope is in short supply. As you finish your meager breakfast, you realize that the Wild West is less a place and more a constant challenge, a test of endurance, luck, and nerve. Every bite, every glance, every step carries the risk of harm, humiliation, or worse. Your mouth is dry, your skin sticky with sweat, and your spirit feels the weight of countless unseen dangers. This is a land that doesn't just demand survival, it demands a kind of savage wit and resilience you're not sure you possess. You step back outside, shielding your eyes against the glare. The heat is already building toward an unbearable crescendo. You think about the rattlesnake, the scorpion, the hidden dangers in your boots, and the wary eyes inside that dusty store. Somehow you know that breakfast was only the first round. The Wild West has many more challenges lined up for you before the day is done. You've barely swallowed the last gritty spoonful of your suspicious breakfast when the reality of who you're sharing this dust bowl with starts to sink in. This isn't just any sleepy frontier town, it's a powder keg of personalities, half-truths, and hidden agendas. The kind of place where every man carries a loaded gun and every handshake might be the start of a shootout. You realize pretty fast that surviving here means knowing how to read not just the land, but the people, and right now you're illiterate in both. You decide to stay put for a while, nursing your burnt coffee and observing the characters around you. There's a weather-beaten man at the bar whose missing eye gleams with a story you don't want to hear. A woman, sharp-eyed and steely, counts coins with deliberate care. Perhaps a madam or just someone who's learned to keep her business close. A group of rough-looking miners debate loudly about the latest strike of gold that might turn their luck around, but their faces betray more desperation than hope. You're surrounded by people who live in the knife's edge, ready to cut or be cut depending on how the wind blows. You catch the bartender's eye and ask who runs this town. He shrugs, polishing a glass so vigorously you suspect he's trying to erase a whole day's worth of sins. Nobody really, just the fastest gun and the loudest mouth. His answer hangs in the air like the scent of cheap whiskey, bitter and inevitable. In this place, law isn't a thing you rely on, it's what you impose. And trust. That's a currency too precious to waste on strangers. You spot a man leaning in the corner, fingers twitching near his holster. A subtle gesture to remind you that you're lucky to be breathing and sitting on that creaky stool. You remind yourself not to make sudden moves. As you try to make sense of the tension in the room, you overhear snippets of conversation. "He's been robbing the stagecoach," one says quietly. They say he's got a posse on his tail. Another grumbles about cattle rustlers cutting fences and stealing the town's last remaining livestock. The headlines might be familiar, but the stakes here are life and death, not just newsprint. You remember that the Wild West wasn't just about gunfights and gold. It was also a brutal social experiment, people thrown together trying to carve out a life, with little law, little mercy, and plenty of suspicion. Historians still argue whether these towns were truly wild or just misrepresented by dime novels eager to sell sensational stories. But standing here watching the wary eyes and twitchy hands, you're convinced the reality was just as unforgiving. Suddenly, a commotion breaks out near the door. A man stumbles in, clutching his side blood seeping through his fingers. The room falls silent, all eyes shifting to him like a pack of wolves sensing weakness. The bartender motions for quiet and pulls out a whiskey bottle, handing it over with a nod. "Drink up, this'll take the edge off." You watch as the man gulps down the fiery liquid, his face twisted in pain and defiance. This town doesn't have an ambulance or a hospital. It has whiskey and whatever crude remedies the barber/doctor can muster. You recall tales of frontier medicine involving cauterizing wounds with hot irons and pulling bullets with unsterilized tools. You're suddenly very glad you've never broken a bone here. A couple of men rise to help the injured stranger, their faces grim but steady. You notice one of them fingers the butt of his pistol just in case the pain turns into trouble. There's an unspoken code here, help your own, but be ready for betrayal. Trust is earned with blood, not words. You try to steady your nerves as you take in the scene. The injured man's name is Jack, and he's been chased down after robbing a stagecoach. You can feel the heat of judgment burning in the room. No one wants to be the next victim of Jack's greed, but they also know the dangers of harboring enemies. The line between justice and vengeance blurs in this place like a desert mirage. You wonder how many times Jack has been given a second chance only to squander it. There's a glint in his eyes that tells you he's not finished yet, either with this town or with life itself. You think about the precariousness of every person's existence here. One wrong decision, one missed step, and the Reapers waiting just beyond the saloon's swinging doors. As the town's unofficial judge, the bartender calls for calm. "We'll let the law handle him. For now." The words sound hollow, but in a place where law is often a whispered rumor, it's the best they can do. You realize quickly that justice in the Wild West is less about courts and more about guns, grudges, and survival instinct. You take a deep breath and try to swallow your growing anxiety. This breakfast meeting with the town's characters has been a harsh lesson in frontier reality. It's not the romanticized land of wide-open spaces and heroic legends you might have imagined. It's a place where the slightest mistake can cost you everything, where every stranger is a potential enemy, and where survival depends on reading between the lines and the trigger fingers. Your stomach rumbles again, but this time it's more than hunger. It's the gnawing realization that the Wild West isn't just a place you visit. It's a place that visits you, shaping every thought, every move, every breath you take. and you're just getting started. You push open the saloon's swinging doors and are immediately greeted by the aroma of stale whiskey cigar smoke and something faintly sour that you pray isn't coming from the floor. The low murmur of voices mingles with the clatter of poker chips and the occasional burst of laughter, sharp and brittle like the cracking of a whip. The wooden floorboards creak under your boots as you step cautiously inside, acutely aware that you've entered a battleground disguised as a watering hole. Around you, rough men in dusty hats eye you like a fresh carcass. Their fingers twitch near revolvers holstered at their hips, and the air is thick with unspoken challenges. This isn't the kind of place where you sit down for a friendly drink here. Every sip might be your last, and every glance your undoing. You head to the bar, nodding to the barkeep, who looks like he's seen one too many bar brawls and barely survives on grit and bad decisions. Whiskey, you say, your voice steadier than you feel. He pours a glass without looking, sliding it across the counter with a nod that says, "Don't get in trouble." You take a tentative sip and grimace. This isn't the smooth bourbon you're used to. It's harsh and biting, burning a trail down your throat and reminding you that luxury is a long way from here. As you scan the room, you realize that the saloon is a microcosm of the town's volatile social order. There's a poker game in the corner, smoke curling lazily around the players' faces. Their eyes are sharp and calculating. Every card dealt carries the weight of life or death. Cheating is assumed, accusations fly, and tempers flare with the flick of a card or a crooked smile. You learn quickly that here playing cards is less about luck and more about deception and knowing when to draw your gun if things get out of hand. A rugged man seated nearby catches your eye and gives you a nod that's half warning, half invitation. You remember reading that in these parts, making friends is often a matter of mutual survival rather than shared interests. He introduces himself as Sam, a cattle driver, who spent years navigating the perilous trails and dodging rustlers. Sam's stories are peppered with humor and cautionary tales about cattle stampedes that could crush a man like a bug, outlaws who never quit hunting, and the ever-present threat of droughts that could turn a thriving ranch into a dust bowl overnight. But even Sam warns you about the saloon's unwritten rules. Don't start nothing, don't say nothing stupid, and whatever you do, don't look a man in the eye too long, he says with a grin. Could get you a bullet or a knife before you know it. His voice is low, but the meaning is clear. Respect is earned by reading the room and knowing when to keep your mouth shut. You try to relax, but the tension in the room is palpable. At any moment, a fight could erupt over a card game, a flirt gone wrong, or a grudge that's been simmering for months. The slightest spark, and the whole place could turn into a chaos of flying chairs, broken glass, and gunfire. You remind yourself that this is not a movie set. This is real life in the Wild West, and the stakes are terrifyingly high. Between stories, Sam shares a quirky tidbit about the origins of the saloon's peculiar decoration, a mounted alligator head with crocodile dung stuffed into its eyes to keep the glare down. Historians still argue whether this was an authentic practice or just a tall tale invented by traveling showmen to attract curious visitors. Either way, the image sticks with you, a perfect symbol of the wild, unpredictable, and often absurd nature of frontier life. Your nervousness starts to ebb as you get drawn into the rhythm of the room. The music from a battered piano played by a woman whose fingers dance with surprising grace offers a brief respite from the tension. Her tunes are haunting, blending melancholy with a strange hopefulness that feels out of place yet somehow fitting. You sip your whiskey, the harsh burn grounding you in the moment. You realize that while this place is dangerous, it's also a hub of stories, connections, and survival strategies. Every face in the saloon carries a history of hardship loss and a fierce determination to make it through another day. But your brief comfort is shattered when a loud voice booms from the far end of the room. Two men are arguing, voices raised, insults flying. You notice hands inching toward gun belts. The room hushes, all eyes fixed on the brewing confrontation. You recall that gunfights in saloons were notoriously unpredictable, often sparked by something as trivial as a spilled drink or a misunderstood glance. You inch toward the door thinking it might be time to leave before this escalates. But then, just as suddenly as it began, the fight dissolves. A barkeep steps in, sliding a bottle across the table as a peace offering. The tension dissipates and the saloon returns to its uneasy calm. You step back into the harsh sunlight outside, your heart still racing. The saloon was more than a place to drink. It was a crucible where reputations were forged and tested, where survival depended on nerves of steel and a sharp eye. You think about Sam's words and the unwritten rules that govern this place. You remind yourself that you're just a visitor here and the Wild West does not suffer fools lightly. You mount the horse, a creature bigger and far less cooperative than you imagined. The saddle creaks ominously as you settle into it, a reminder that horses here are less like loyal pets and more like opinionated partners who tolerate you at best. Your legs ache already from gripping too tight, and the horse snorts impatiently, clearly unimpressed with your amateur riding skills. You realize quickly that controlling a stubborn mule or a willful horse isn't something you do by sheer will. It's a subtle negotiation, an ongoing conversation that you're just beginning to understand. The sun blazes overhead as you trot out of town, the dusty trail stretching ahead like a ribbon of uncertainty. You can feel the coarse dirt kicking up, landing in your eyes and mingling with sweat to form gritty tears. Your boots, still stuffed with sand from last night, thump unevenly against the stirrups as you struggle to keep balance. The horse jolts, suddenly startled by a rustling in the bushes, and you nearly go flying into the cactus. This is not the graceful ride you imagined when you thought of cowboys and open plains. As you press on, you begin to pick up the rhythms of the trail, the steady thud of hooves, the creak of leather, and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. The landscape around you is a patchwork of sagebrush, rocky outcrops, and sparse trees that offer little shade. The wind carries the scent of dry earth and something else, maybe smoke or the faint tang of distant campfires. You realize quickly that the wilderness around you isn't just beautiful, it's indifferent and potentially lethal. You remember tales of riders who could coax a mule to behave with a gentle touch and a firm word. The animals here have personalities, some stubborn, some skittish, others downright hostile to strangers. Historians still debate whether the myth of the wild horse roaming untamed plains holds any water, or if most horses were always semi-domesticated and bound to human will. But you don't have time to ponder this. The horse beneath you clearly has its own agenda. Suddenly the trail narrows and dips into a rocky ravine. The horse hesitates, ears twitching, as if listening to whispers only it can hear. You grip the reins tighter, heart pounding. The path is uneven, and one misstep could send you tumbling into the jagged rocks below. You try to steady your breathing, remembering every riding lesson you ever ignored. The horse picks its way carefully, and you begin to trust its instincts more than your own panic. Along the way, you spot a mule train loaded with supplies, its handlers nodding in acknowledgement, but offering no invitation. Mules, you learn, are the backbone of frontier travel, stubborn, but reliable, able to carry heavy loads over rough terrain. The handlers share stories of breakdowns, lost cargo, and wild animals, their voices tinged with exhaustion and resilience. You realize that every journey here is a gamble and every rider a survivor by necessity. The sun climbs higher and the heat becomes relentless. You feel your shirt sticking to your back, your throat dry despite your best efforts to sip water. You remember the scorpion and rattlesnake from earlier the desert's reminders that danger lurks not just in bandits, but in every corner of the landscape. A sudden movement in the brush catches your eye, a rattlesnake coiled and ready to strike slides away with alarming speed. You remind yourself to watch every step, every shadow. As the day drags on, you try to communicate with your mount, murmuring soft words and adjusting your grip. The horse snorts and tosses its head, reminding you that you're still the novice here. You learn quickly that riding isn't just about controlling the animal, it's about earning its trust. And trust in the Wild West is a currency more valuable than gold. Around midday, you stop near a dry creek bed to rest. You dismount awkwardly, your legs trembling. The horse drinks cautiously from a muddy pool while you attempt to wet your parched lips. Nearby, a group of cowboys lounges against rocks, their hats pulled low to shield from the sun. They nod in greeting but keep their distance, a subtle reminder that trust is earned slowly and easily lost. One of the cowboys, a lean man with sun-leathered skin and a quick smile, offers you a jerky strip. "Best way to keep your strength out here," he says. You accept gratefully, the tough meat chewing like rubber but somehow satisfying. He shares tales of long drives, cattle stampedes, and narrow escapes from outlaw gangs. His stories paint a picture of life on the edge, unpredictable, dangerous, and exhausting. You notice that despite the hardships, these men share a bond forged in sweat and shared danger. They joke, tease, and sing campfire songs that carry across the open plains as the sun dips toward the horizon. Their laughter is a balm against the harshness of the day, a reminder that even in the toughest places, humans find reasons to connect and endure. But you also hear warnings the wild isn't forgiving, and even the best riders fall victim to accidents, dehydration, or worse. You recall stories of men lost to rattlesnake bites, sudden storms, or ambushes by desperate bandits. Historians still debate whether the Wild West was truly lawless or simply governed by a harsher, more immediate code of survival and retribution. As the sky turns pink and orange, you realize that the day has worn you down more than you expected. Your muscles ache, your throat burns, and your confidence wavers. You dismount again, grateful for the moment of respite, but aware that night brings its own dangers. Cold predators and the unknown. You make camp near a cluster of mesquite trees, trying to mimic the cowboys' routine. You set a small fire, careful to keep it low and controlled. The horse grazes nearby, ears flicking at every sound. As darkness falls, you listen to the calls of coyotes in the distance and the rustle of nocturnal creatures stirring. The night sky here is breathtaking, an endless canopy of stars that seem both beautiful and indifferent to your plight. You lie back on the ground, muscles sore but spirit stirred by the vastness around you. You realize that riding in the Wild West isn't just about mastering the horse or the land. It's about embracing a life where every moment is a test, every step a gamble. As you drift towards sleep, you feel the weight of the day settle in. You survive the ride, but only barely. The horse's snort and the crackle of the fire are your lullabies, reminding you that tomorrow will bring new challenges and that trust, whether in man or beast, is the most precious thing out here. You crouch by the edge of a chilly, fast-moving creek, cold water rushing past your fingers as you cup a handful to your parched lips. Your breath forms little clouds in the crisp morning air, but the sensation of cold water against your tongue is like a jolt to your senses, a small victory in the relentless battle for survival in this unforgiving land. Around you, the landscape is a patchwork of rocks, sparse trees and scrubby brush, the distant peaks dusted with early snow. This isn't the gold rush fever dream of shiny nuggets and easy riches that dime novels promised. It's a gritty, relentless slog where every glimmer in the pan might just be a sliver of pyrite, and every hopeful miner is a study in exhaustion and desperation. You've joined a group of prospectors, their faces weathered, and sunburnt hands calloused and stained from endless hours sifting through gravel and dirt. They work quietly, their eyes fixed on the swirling water and the tiny specks that might hold promise. You try to mimic their careful motions, swirling the pan and letting the heavier sediment wash away, praying that something valuable remains. The water is icy cold, biting at your fingers and numbing your hands, but you force yourself to keep going. This is survival, one fleck of gold at a time. You learn quickly that panning for gold isn't just a physical challenge, it's a mental one. Patience is your greatest ally, and disappointment is your constant companion. Many miners live with the cruel paradox of hope and despair, chasing the dream of a strike that might pull them out of poverty, while facing the relentless reality of empty pans and aching backs. Some prospectors swear by secret techniques passed down through generations, while others rely on superstitions or sheer luck. Historians still argue whether the gold rush actually made most people rich, or if it was mostly a boon for sellers of pickaxes, pans, and whiskey. As you work, you notice a raccoon lurking nearby, its beady eyes gleaming with curiosity and mischief. It moves with surprising confidence, darting between rocks and snatching scraps from unattended campsites. This small creature seems perfectly adapted to this harsh environment, clever, opportunistic, and unafraid of humans. You watch as it approaches a prospector's food stash, quickly snatching a piece of jerky before disappearing into the bushes. It's a reminder that survival here requires both cunning and boldness. Your companions share tales of narrow escapes and hard-won victories. One miner recounts how he nearly lost a finger to a snapping jawstone while sorting through ore. Another talks about sleeping in a tent while a mountain lion prowled just outside its eyes, glowing like embers in the dark. These stories weave a tapestry of danger and determination that defines life in the gold fields. You notice that the group is a mix of backgrounds, immigrants chasing the American dream, hardened frontiersmen trying to rebuild their fortunes, and a few who seem to have nowhere else to go. The camaraderie is fragile, built on shared hardship, but also marked by fierce competition. Trust is rare, and accusations of cheating or stealing are common. You realize that while the landscape is harsh, the human terrain is even more treacherous. Your hands are raw and numb from the cold water, but you push on, driven by a mix of desperation and stubborn hope. The glint of gold in a pan could mean everything: a ticket out of this relentless grind, a chance to start over, or simply a fleeting glimpse of fortune. But the reality is often far grimmer. Many miners toil for weeks, months, or years with little to show for it. Illness, injury, and exhaustion take their toll. You remember reading that some prospectors resorted to drinking whiskey not just for warmth, but as a numbing escape from their harsh lives. As the sun climbs higher, the group breaks for a meager lunch hardtack. Jerky and stale bread, washed down with lukewarm coffee. You eat silently, the bitter taste lingering as you watch the others. There's a weary resilience in their eyes, a determination that borders on desperation. You wonder how many will still be here when the snow melts, and how many dreams will be buried along with the empty pans. Suddenly, the peaceful rhythm of the creek is shattered by a loud shout. One of the miners has found something, a small, glittering nugget clutched in his hand. The group gathers around, eyes wide with excitement and envy. For a moment, the weight of hardship lifts, replaced by the intoxicating rush of hope. But you know better. The gold rush is a cruel game, and for every strike there are countless failures. You spend the afternoon learning to read the landscape, where the water slows, where sediment settles, and where the chances of finding gold are higher. The miners talk about pay streaks and placer deposits, terms that sound like secret codes for survival. You listen carefully, knowing that knowledge is your best weapon in this unforgiving world. As the day fades, you reflect on the contradictions of this life. The gold rush promises wealth and freedom, but delivers hardship and uncertainty. It draws people from all walks of life into a brutal contest against nature and each other. The feverish dreams of fortune clash with the harsh realities of isolation, injury, and loss. That night, as you lie in a makeshift shelter under a canopy of stars, the sounds of the wilderness surround you. The distant howl of wolves, the rustle of leaves, and the crackle of a campfire. You feel the weight of the day's toil in your muscles and the ache of uncertainty in your heart. But you also feel something else, a flicker of hope, a spark that keeps you going despite the odds. You realize that survival in the goldfields isn't just about striking it rich. It's about enduring the long, cold nights, the empty pans, and the constant threat of danger. It's about finding moments of beauty and connection in a harsh and unforgiving land. And it's about holding on to hope even when the odds are stacked against you. As you drift asleep, you think about the raccoon and its cleverness, the miners and their resilience, and the creek that continues to flow indifferent to human dreams and struggles. You understand that in the Wild West, survival is a complex dance of luck, skill, and sheer stubbornness. And for all its hardships, it's a dance you're determined to learn. The doctor approaches with a swagger that suggests confidence, but lacks any comforting certainty. You notice immediately the weathered leather satchel slung over his shoulder, bulging with tools that look more suited to a blacksmith than a healer. His hat sits askew, shadowing sharp eyes that gleam with both exhaustion and something bordering on amusement. In one hand, he clutches a flask of whiskey, the true elixir of frontier medicine, and in the other, a rusted bone saw that's seen more work than you'd want to imagine. This is no hospital. This is survival theater. And the doctor is the reluctant star. You're ushered into a dimly lit room that smells of antiseptic if you squint and stretch your imagination. Or more realistically, a pungent blend of sweat whiskey and stale smoke. The walls are adorned with faded, peeling posters of far-off cities and medical diagrams that look more like ancient maps. A wooden table serves as the operating bench, its surface scarred by years of crude surgeries and hurried amputations. You try not to focus on the faint stains that hint at past horrors. The doctor doesn't waste time on pleasantries. "Whiskey first," he growls, handing you the flask. The burn of the liquid is sharp, chasing away some of the fear that grips your chest. He examines your injury, a nasty gash you acquired from a scuffle, or maybe an unfortunate tumble, and nods with a mixture of professional detachment and resigned pragmatism. "I'm gonna clean this up, but it won't be pretty." He warns, already uncorking a bottle of something cloudy and foul-smelling. You realize it's probably a homemade antiseptic or some concoction, designed more to intimidate germs than soothe pain. He pours it over the wound, and the sting is instant and intense. You grit your teeth, trying not to scream. The doctor's tools clatter on the table as he prepares to stitch the wound. His hands are steady but rough, betraying the lack of formal training but years of hard-earned experience. He jokes darkly about his medical diploma being in question, which barely lightens the tension. Historians still debate how many frontier doctors were actual physicians and how many were self-taught adventurers with a flair for theatrics and a taste for whiskey. You watch as he works, marveling at the crude efficiency of his methods. There's no anesthesia beyond the whiskey, no sterile environment, and definitely no painkillers that would be considered acceptable today. But somehow, in this makeshift clinic, survival hinges on grit, courage, and a bit of luck. The doctor shares stories between stitches, tales of gunshot wounds patched up with thread, stolen from horse tack of infections, fought off with herbs and whiskey, and of miraculous recoveries that defied both medicine and odds. You listen fascinated and horrified in equal measure. This is frontier medicine in its rawest form, part necessity, part desperation, and part bravado. At one point, he brandishes the bone saw, demonstrating how he once had to amputate a man's leg after a rattlesnake bite became gangrenous. The story is grim, but the doctor's delivery is matter of fact, almost proud. You realize that in the Wild West, death is a constant companion, and the doctor's role is as much about delaying the inevitable as it is about healing. As the procedure wraps up, the doctor slaps a patch over your wound and hands you a small bottle of tonic. Drink this twice a day, he advises. Might taste like swamp water, but it'll keep the infection at bay or at least slow it down. You suspect it's more whiskey with a hint of herbs, but in this place, hope tastes better than most things. Before you leave, the doctor tips his hat and mutters, "Don't be a stranger." You laugh nervously, knowing full well you'll do everything in your power to avoid another visit. Still, there's a strange camaraderie in this grim exchange, a reminder that even in the harshest places, people do what they can to help each other survive. Outside, you breathe deeply, the cool air a balm against the lingering sting of treatment. You think about the countless others who have passed through this doctor's doors, some saved, some lost, and the fragile thread that separates life from death here. Frontier medicine isn't just about skills or knowledge, it's about courage, adaptability, and the sheer will to live. As you walk back into the dusty streets, you carry with you not just a patched wound, but a story of survival of a healer, armed with whiskey and determination, battling the odds in a land where the frontier never truly ends. You find yourself standing in the blistering sun as the clock's heavy hand inches toward noon, the dreaded high noon when the Wild West's notorious duels often unfold. The town square has emptied of its usual bustle, replaced by a tense stillness that presses down on you like the oppressive heat. You're surrounded by wooden buildings, their facades faded and cracked by relentless sun and wind, each one bearing witness to countless showdowns that have stained this dusty ground with sweat, fear, and sometimes blood. You're not sure how you ended up here, standing awkwardly at the center of it all, but suddenly the weight of dozens of watchful eyes falls upon you. The murmurs ripple through the crowd like wildfire, a mix of curiosity, anticipation, and a hint of dread. You're about to become part of a ritual older than the town itself, a duel. And let's be honest, you didn't exactly volunteer for this. Across the square, your opponent steps out of the shade, a figure cloaked in dust and menace, hand resting lightly on the grip of a polished revolver. His eyes lock onto yours with cold calculation. You realize you're not just fighting for pride or reputation. You're fighting for your life. The townsfolk slowly circle around, forming a rough perimeter. Some clutch their hats nervously. Others lean in, eager for the drama. The local sheriff stands nearby, his expression unreadable but his hand twitching near his own weapon. This is serious business, a deadly dance choreographed by honor and lawlessness. You take a deep breath, the dry air burning your lungs. Your hands tremble slightly as you reach for your own gun, more out of obligation than confidence. You recall the stories you've heard about these duels, the lightning-fast draw, the split-second decision, the ruthless precision required to survive. Historians still argue whether the cinematic portrayals of duels were accurate or romanticized exaggerations. But standing here now, you understand the terrifying reality behind the legend. The sun blazes directly overhead, casting long, stark shadows that stretch like fingers across the cracked earth. The silence is deafening. You count the seconds, feeling every heartbeat echoing in your ears. Then the signal, a sharp whistle, a dropped hat, a word you barely catch, and the duel begins. Your hand moves instinctively, but your mind is a whirlwind of panic and focus. The revolvers flash smoke curls in the midday air, and the world narrows to a single moment, suspended between life and death. You hear the sharp crack of gunfire, the thud of a body hitting the ground, and the collective gasp of the crowd. If you're lucky, you've walked away with a scratch and a story to tell. If not, well, history is littered with names forgotten, and lives cut short by moments like this. The aftermath is a blur of adrenaline and chaos. Some rush to tend the wounded, others call for calm. The sheriff steps forward to restore order, his voice firm but weary. The town resumes its uneasy rhythm, but the echoes of the duel linger like ghosts in the dusty air. You realize that in the Wild West, violence is woven into the fabric of daily life. Honor, survival, and justice blur into one volatile mix, with duels serving as both punishment and spectacle. It's a brutal testament to a time and place where law was often enforced by the barrel of a gun rather than by courts or contracts. As the sun begins to dip toward the horizon, you reflect on the surreal experience. The duel wasn't just about skill or courage, it was about the fragile balance of respect, fear, and power that keeps this rough town functioning. You feel a newfound respect for those who navigate this deadly dance every day, knowing that one wrong move could mean the end. You step away from the square, your heart still pounding, the heat of the day replaced by the cool embrace of evening. The town settles back into its dusty routines, but you carry with you the indelible mark of high noon, a reminder that in the Wild West, survival is a game played on a razor's edge. You find yourself saddled with a posse, a motley crew called together by the town's sheriff, to track down an outlaw who's been making a mess of things. The group isn't what you imagined. It's a mix of grizzled veterans, eager young guns, and a few who look like they might have more skeletons in their closets than bullets in their guns. As you mount your horse, you get the distinct feeling that this posse is as much about appearances and posturing as it is about actual justice. The sun hangs low, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape as you set off. The trail is rough, littered with broken branches and faint hoofprints, signs of your quarry's hurried passage. Your group moves with a mixture of urgency and caution, each member scanning the horizon with hawk-like eyes. The air smells of dry earth and smoke from distant campfires mingling with the tense silence. You quickly learn that in this posse, trust is a scarce commodity. Whispers and side glances abound, and you overhear murmurs that some members might be outlaws themselves, using the hunt as cover for their own schemes. This duplicity adds a layer of danger beyond the threat of the outlaw you're pursuing. Historians still debate how often pizzazz were genuine lawmen versus convenient masks for bandits to avoid suspicion while terrorizing the countryside. Your instincts scream caution as you watch a man named Clem, who keeps his hand near his gun and offers a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Another, a wiry fellow called Hank, talks big about his exploits but seems jumpy when the conversation turns serious. You remind yourself that in the Wild West, alliances are fragile and betrayal often lurks just beneath the surface. The days stretch long and monotonous, with the posse camping under star-studded skies, sharing sparse meals around flickering fires. Around the firelight, stories unfold tales of narrow escapes, legendary shootouts, and hard lessons learned in the unforgiving terrain. These stories are as much a way to pass time as they are warnings and boasts, a ritual that bonds the group despite underlying tensions. You discover that tracking an outlaw isn't just about following footprints. It's about reading the land, interpreting signs that the untrained eye would miss. Broken twigs, disturbed soil, and the faint scent of smoke tell a story of movement and desperation. The outlaw isn't just running, he's fighting to survive just like you. At one point, the posse comes across a deserted camp hastily abandoned. The remnants, a half-burnt fire, a torn piece of clothing speak volumes. Your heart quickens with the thrill of the chase and the dread of what might come next. Tensions rise as accusations fly. Clem accuses Hank of hiding supplies. Hank retorts that Clem's been skimming from the loot. You watch the delicate dance of suspicion and camaraderie, knowing that a single spark could ignite violence within the group. It's a stark reminder that the line between lawman and outlaw is often blurred, and survival means playing both sides without getting caught. As you close in on the outlaw's trail, the landscape shifts from open plains to dense thickets and rocky outcrops terrain, perfect for ambushes. Every rustle in the brush sets your nerves on edge. The posse moves with heightened alertness, guns ready and eyes sharp. One evening, as the sun sets in a blaze of orange and purple, you spot movement ahead, a figure slipping through the shadows. The posse gives chase, guns drawn. The outlaw is fast, but fatigue is catching up. After a tense pursuit, you corner him near a cliff's edge. The standoff is charged with adrenaline and uncertainty. The outlaw's eyes flash defiance and desperation. The posse encircles him, guns trained but hands hesitant. This moment embodies the harsh reality of frontier justice, quick, brutal, and often merciless. You realize that catching this man isn't the end of the story. What happens next, the trial, the punishment is as unpredictable and dangerous as the chase itself. In the Wild West, justice is a raw human affair shaped by fear, power, and sometimes mercy. As the posse rides back, the outlaw in tow, the mood is subdued. The thrill of the hunt is replaced by the weight of consequences. You reflect on the complex dance of loyalty and betrayal, justice, and survival that defines life here. You think about the posse members, their secrets, their fears, their hopes, and how each of them walks a thin line between order and chaos. In the Wild West, that line is often blurred, and your place on it is determined not just by who you are, but by who you can convince yourself and others to be. As the town's lights come into view, you prepare to face whatever judgment awaits. The outlaw's fate is sealed, but your own story in this harsh land is just beginning. The cold iron bars clink shut behind you with a finality that sends a shiver down your spine. The dim light inside the jailhouse casts long shadows on the rough wooden floor, and the stale air smells of sweat, despair, and years of forgotten stories. You're thrown into a cramped cell alongside a man who glares at you with suspicion and something darker. The door locks with a heavy, unforgiving clang, and suddenly the Wild West's brutal hospitality becomes painfully real. Your crime. Something vague, something you didn't quite understand when it happened. A misunderstanding, perhaps? Or the wrong place at the wrong time. The sheriff wasn't interested in your side of the story. In this land, justice is swift, often arbitrary, and rarely kind. The cellmate, a burly man named Gus, has been here longer than he cares to admit. His face is scarred and his eyes tell tales of hard fights and harder losses. He's been locked up for theft, but there's more to his story. Rumors of a past filled with violence, regret, and a desperate hope for redemption. His presence is both a warning and a strange comfort in the cold darkness. As hours stretch into the long, endless night, you learn that the jailhouse is a microcosm of frontier life, raw, unpredictable, and unforgiving. The guards are few, their attention divided, and often bought with whiskey or favors. The other prisoners range from hardened criminals to unlucky souls caught in the wrong crossfire. You listen to the murmurs of the jail, a low hum of whispered conversations, the occasional shout, and the restless shifting of bodies on rough straw bedding. Stories circulate about escapes, betrayals, and the rare acts of kindness that shine like faint stars in a dark sky. Historians still debate how common jailbreaks were in these frontier towns, but one thing is clear. Life behind bars was a test of endurance and wits. You try to make sense of your predicament, weighing the options. You could plead your case, but the sheriff's patience is thin, and the law often favors the loudest voice or the biggest gun. You could wait for a trial, but rumors of swift summary justice make the prospect grim. Or you could consider escape a dangerous gamble, but sometimes the only choice. Your cellmate Gus shares his own experiences, offering advice wrapped in gruff humor and hard-earned wisdom. He tells you about the importance of patience, observation, and the occasional bribe. He warns you to keep your head down and your eyes open because in here, allies can become enemies in a heartbeat. As the night wears on, you face the cold bite of loneliness and fear. The shadows seem to stretch and twist, and every creak of the building sets your nerves on edge. You try to focus on the stories Gus tells, stories that bring moments of laughter and a strange sense of camaraderie amid the despair. Suddenly, the jailhouse door rattles. A new prisoner is brought in, a woman whose fierce gaze commands attention. She moves with a confidence that belies her circumstances, and the men in the cell shift uneasily. Her story is whispered among the inmates, a tale of love betrayal and a fight against injustice that led her here. In this harsh world, even the jail is a stage for stories of strength and survival. You realize that the jailhouse isn't just a place of punishment, it's a crucible where character is tested, alliances forged, and futures decided. The line between freedom and captivity is thin, and every moment is a struggle against despair. As dawn approaches, you hear the distant sounds of the town, waking the clatter of hooves, the murmur of voices, and the ever-present tension of a place where danger never sleeps. You know that whatever happens next, your time in this cell will change you. You steel yourself for the coming day, the uncertainty of your fate hanging heavy in the air. The Wild West has thrown you into its darkest corner, but survival isn't about avoiding the darkness, it's about finding the light within it. The cold iron bars clatter shut behind you with a finality that sends a shiver straight through your spine. Suddenly, the dusty freedom of the Wild West feels like a distant memory replaced by the cramped, oppressive reality of a jail cell. The air is thick and stale, smelling of sweat, stale tobacco, and the faint metallic tang of rusted chains. The wooden floor beneath your feet creaks with every movement, the rough straw mattress offering little comfort against the cold. Shadows stretch long on the walls, dancing with every flicker of the solitary candle flickering dimly on the far corner shelf. You glance around your new home. The cell is barely large enough for one person. Yet here you are thrown in alongside another man. His eyes dark and wary meet yours, sizing you up in a way that suggests survival. Here isn't about kindness, it's about toughness. His face is weathered, scarred from a life hardened by years on the frontier, and his hands rest casually near his belt fingers, twitching in anticipation of any sudden trouble. His name is Gus, and the stories etched into his lines hint at a past filled with hardship and regret. Your own offense feels hazy, perhaps a misunderstanding, or a result of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The sheriff had been blunt, showing little interest in hearing your side of the story. In the frontier, justice is swift and merciless, dispensed as much by the gun as by the law. The jailhouse is less a place of rehabilitation and more a holding pen for those awaiting their fate, whether by trial bounty or the hangman's rope. Gus grunts, breaking the heavy silence. You're new here. Best learn fast. Ain't much justice in these parts. Just survival. His voice is rough, but there's an unexpected warmth beneath the gruff exterior. Most of us got stories to tell, some true, some stretched, but all reminders of why we're stuck in here. As the hours crawl by, you begin to listen. The jailhouse is a microcosm of the Wild West's brutal reality where luck, grit, and cunning determine who walks free and who stays behind bars. The other prisoners range from hardened criminals to unlucky souls caught in unfortunate circumstances. Murmurs fill the air, whispered tales of jailbreaks, double crosses, and the rare acts of mercy that flicker like candlelight in this grim place. Between bouts of restless pacing and restless sleep, Gus shares wisdom born from years inside these walls. Keep your head down, he advises. Watch who talks, who listens, and who's just waiting for a chance to stab you in the back. Trust ain't given. It's earned, and even then it's fragile as a desert flower. You try to imagine how many have passed through these bars before you, men and women, broken by fate, hardened by circumstance, or simply unlucky. The reality is grim. The frontier's justice system is often as brutal as the outlaws it seeks to punish. Trials are quick verdicts, sometimes pre-decided, and sentences severe. Night deepens the silence, punctuated by distant howls of coyotes and the occasional clang of metal from the guard's keys. The candle flickers dangerously low, casting eerie shapes that toy with your imagination. Loneliness creeps in, wrapping its cold fingers around your thoughts. You realize that this cell isn't just a physical prison, it's a mental one. Suddenly the heavy door creaks open. A woman steps inside, her eyes fierce and determined. Her presence commands attention even in this grim place. Rumors swirl about her, a fight for justice gone wrong, a love lost to defiance against a world stacked against her. In this harsh land, even jail is a stage for tales of strength, resilience, and survival. You watch as she moves with a confidence that challenges the oppressive gloom. The other prisoners react, some with fear, others with grudging respect. She is a reminder that in the Wild West, survival often means more than brute strength. It requires wit, courage, and an unyielding spirit. The hours stretch into dawn. Outside, the town awakens with the familiar sounds of hooves on dusty streets, voices raised in morning greetings, and the ever-present tension of a place where danger lurks around every corner. Inside your cell, you prepare for what the new day will bring. Your thoughts circle. Will there be a trial, a chance at redemption? Or is the frontier's justice harsher than the wilderness beyond these bars? The uncertainty gnaws at you, but beneath the fear, a stubborn spark of hope remains. Survival isn't just about escaping this place, it's about finding strength within it. You close your eyes, the coarse straw pressing into your back, the muffled sounds of the jailhouse fading into the distance. Tomorrow, the story continues, whether in freedom or confinement. You stand outside the weather-beaten post office, clutching a rough-hewn envelope you hastily scribbled the night before. The air is dry and still, the sun hanging low, casting long stretched shadows across the dusty street. The promise of sending a letter home should be a comforting ritual, an act of connection bridging the vast distances and harsh realities of the Wild West. Instead, it feels like a gamble, a fragile thread tossed into the void, unsure if it will ever reach its destination. The stagecoach driver leans against his battered wagon, the horses stamping restlessly beneath him. The creak of leather harnesses and the low whinny of the animals break the silence as townsfolk gather around, eyeing the mail with a mixture of hope and skepticism. In this remote outpost, the mail system is the lifeline to the outside world, but also a source of frustration and disappointment. You hand over the letter, hoping it will find its way to the right hands. But you've heard the stories. Letters lost for months, sometimes years, wandering in limbo or swallowed by the vast wilderness. Historians still argue about the efficiency of these early postal routes, but the truth is clear: patience is essential and delays are brutal. The driver tips his hat, muttering about the long, treacherous journey ahead. The stagecoach will cross rough terrain, dodge bandits, and endure the whims of weather before reaching the nearest town with a proper post office. You imagine your letter bouncing along rocky paths, carried by tired horses and worn travelers, the words within, hoping for a warm hearth and attentive eyes. The mail system is more than a practical necessity. It's a symbol of connection, hope, and the fragile ties that bind people across distances. Yet it is also a reminder of isolation, the vast emptiness of the frontier, swallowing messages as easily as it swallows lives. As you watch the stagecoach disappear into the horizon, you reflect on the irony that in a land so fiercely independent, communication is both vital and precarious. The uncertainty gnaws at you, the thought that your words, your stories might never reach those you hold dear. Around you, the town buzzes with rumors: letters returned undelivered, parcels lost to thieves, messages delayed so long they arrive outdated and forgotten. You overhear a woman lamenting a letter from her husband, gone missing for 2 years, a man sharing news of a child he'll never meet. Yet despite the risks the mail endures, carried forward by a stubborn hope that defies the wilderness. It is a testament to human resilience and the yearning for connection in a land defined by separation. You tuck your hands into your pockets and wander back into town, the letter, no heavier than when you wrote it, but weighted by the hopes it carries. The stagecoach may be slow, unreliable, and vulnerable, but it is a lifeline, a fragile bridge across the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Wild West. As dusk settles, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, you find a quiet spot to watch the stars emerge, silent witnesses to countless stories sent into the night, waiting for their turn to be heard. In the vast wilderness, the mail is more than a system. It is a promise that despite distance and danger, voices will travel, stories will be shared, and connections will endure. You awaken before dawn to a sky tinged with a faint orange glow, but the usual crispness of morning air is replaced by a thick, acrid haze that stings your eyes and clings to your throat. The distant rumble of thunder is a low, ominous growl, as if the earth itself is warning of what's to come. Today, the prairie is not just a vast sea of grass and wildflowers. It's a tinderbox on the verge of ignition, and you can feel the tension in the air like an electric charge. The land around you has been parched for weeks, maybe months, and the relentless drought has turned the grasses brittle and dry, like a vast carpet of kindling spread across the rolling plains. The settlers in town whisper in hushed tones about the high risk of prairie fires this season, sharing stories of past infernos that have swept through these lands, leaving behind blackened earth and shattered dreams. You step outside, the dry ground crunching beneath your boots. The wind has picked up swirling dust into miniature tornadoes that dance across the horizon. It carries with it a faint scent of smoke, a harbinger of the disaster creeping ever closer. You see the first thin wisps curling over a ridge some miles away, smoke rising like a dark finger pointing accusingly at the sky. The fire has started. Your heart pounds in your chest as you begin to move toward the town, where people are already scrambling to prepare. Ranchers and farmers are hastily clearing brush, digging fire breaks, and wetting down fences with whatever water they can spare. Children clutch their mothers' hands, eyes wide with fear and curiosity. The atmosphere is thick with the sense of urgency and dread. You watch as horses are hurriedly loaded with supplies, ready to be ridden out or evacuated if the flames grow too close. The local blacksmith grinds his tools with grim determination, preparing to repair any damages the fire might cause. Everyone knows that prairie fires are indiscriminate, capable of consuming homes' livestock and livelihoods in a matter of hours. As you join a small group moving toward the outskirts to help with fire breaks, the wind shifts suddenly, carrying the fire's roar closer. The sound is terrifying, a deep crackling thunder that shakes the ground beneath your feet. The flames leap and dance along the grass, fueled by the dry air and gusting winds. Sparks swirl like fiery embers in the air, threatening to ignite new fires wherever they land. You work alongside others, digging trenches and clearing brush, your hands blistered and your clothes soaked in sweat. The heat is relentless, and even as you labor to hold back the advancing blaze, you can feel the fire's hungry breath on your neck. The sun, once a distant overseer, is now overshadowed by smoke that darkens the sky, casting an eerie twilight over the landscape. Suddenly, the wind shifts again, faster and fiercer this time, sending the fire roaring toward you like a living thing. Panic surges through the group as some start to retreat while others scramble to protect their homes and livestock. You sprint toward a narrow ravine you spotted earlier, hoping the rocky terrain will provide a natural barrier. As you reach the ravine, the heat is suffocating. The flames crackle and hiss as they consume the dry grass and shrubs, turning the earth black and leaving behind a scent of destruction. You crouch low, covering your mouth with a cloth to filter the choking smoke. The air feels thick and heavy, and every breath burns your lungs. You watch as a family of rabbits darts from their burrow, their fur singed, but their will to survive intact. Nature's resilience in the face of destruction is both inspiring and heartbreaking. The fire races around the ravine, jumping across the dry creek bed and igniting new patches of grass. You realize that this fire is unlike any you've seen before, unstoppable, unpredictable, and terrifyingly fast. You think of the countless settlers who face such infernos, some losing everything in moments, others barely escaping with their lives. The night brings little relief. Just as the fire's fury seems to wane, dark clouds gather overhead and a violent thunderstorm erupts. Lightning flashes across the sky, illuminating the blackened landscape in brief, stark bursts. The thunder crashes like cannon fire, shaking the earth and rattling the remaining windows of nearby cabins. Rain pours down in sheets, turning the dry dust into slick mud. The storm fights the fire with fierce determination, but it also brings its own dangers. Flash floods surge through the creek beds, carrying away debris and choked ash. The wind howls like a wild beast, hurling branches and debris with destructive force. Frogs, some large and others small, are tossed about in the gale, a surreal and almost comical spectacle amid the chaos. You struggle to find shelter beneath a large mesquite tree, its twisted branches providing scant protection against the driving rain and lashing wind. Your clothes are soaked heavy with water and dirt, and your body shivers despite the lingering heat. The storm's intensity is overwhelming, a raw display of nature's fury in all its forms: fire and water, heat and cold, destruction and renewal. As the storm finally begins to subside, the air clears and the first light of dawn reveals a transformed landscape. The once green prairie is now a patchwork of blackened earth and fresh, wet soil. The smell of smoke lingers, mingling with the crisp scent of rain. Life will return here, because that's the way of the West. Fire clears the old to make way for the new, and rain nourishes the earth to bring forth fresh growth. You trudge through the mud, tired and aching, but with a renewed sense of awe and respect for this land. The settlers have faced firestorms and thunderstorms, droughts and floods, yet they continue to build to hope and to survive. You think of the native peoples who once roamed these lands, understanding the cycles of fire and renewal. using controlled burns to manage the landscape. You remember the stories told by elders about respecting the power of fire and the spirits of the land, a wisdom often lost in the rush to tame the wilderness. As you return to town, you see neighbors helping neighbors, sharing food, water, and words of comfort. The sense of community shines brightest in the face of adversity. The prairie may be scarred, but the spirit of those who call it home is unbroken. You sit by a small fire, drying your clothes and warming your chilled bones. The stars begin to emerge in the clear night sky, silent witnesses to the endless cycles of destruction and rebirth that define the Wild West. You realize that survival here is not just about endurance, it's about adaptation, resilience, and an unyielding connection to the land. Tomorrow, the prairie will begin to heal, and life will return in new and unexpected ways. And so will you. You set out with a group of cowboys just as the sun begins its slow climb over the horizon, the sky painted in soft pinks and golds that belie the hard day ahead. The scent of damp earth and fresh grass mingles with the unmistakable musk of horses and leather. The rhythm of hooves thudding against the dirt is steady, almost hypnotic as you join the great cattle drive, winding its way across the sprawling plains. This isn't some leisurely trail ride. It's grueling work, a test of endurance, skill, and nerve. You quickly learn that cowboys aren't just horsemen. They're herders, navigators, and sometimes the only line between the cattle and disaster. They work together in an intricate dance, guiding hundreds of restless animals over treacherous terrain, through rivers and past dangers both natural and man-made. The cattle are the lifeblood of the West, worth a small fortune but notoriously difficult to manage. The smell of cow chips or dried cow dung is everywhere. They carpet the ground in thick, cracked patches, a constant reminder of the herd's presence. You quickly realize that despite some popular misconceptions, cow chips are neither edible nor a fire-starting novelty. They're just a pesky, persistent part of life on the trail. The cowboys sing as they ride, their voices rising in rough, soulful campfire songs that tell tales of longing adventure and hardship. Their music is a balm for tired bodies and spirits, a connection to home and hope amid the vast wilderness. These songs, some passed down through generations, speak of the loneliness and camaraderie that define life on the range. You ride alongside a seasoned cowboy named Jed, whose weathered face and calm demeanor speak of years spent in the saddle. He shares stories of stampedes that tore through herds and seconds of narrow escapes from thunderstorm-fueled floods, and of the ever-present threat of rustlers, thieves, who'd risk life and limb to steal cattle and sell them for quick cash. Jed warns you about the dangers that lurk beyond the obvious. Poisonous snakes basking in the sun, sudden drops in the trail hidden by tall grass, and the unpredictable nature of the cattle themselves. A stampede's like a thunderstorm, he says. Fast, loud, and deadly if you ain't ready. Historians still debate the scale and frequency of cattle drives, but there's no doubt they were brutal, exhausting, and essential to the West's economy. You realize that the cowboy's life is a constant battle against exhaustion, injury, and isolation, yet they carry on bound by duty and a fierce pride. As the day wears on, the heat rises and dust swirls in clouds around the herd. Your throat is parched and the sun beats down relentlessly. The cowboys share jerky and hardtack their rations, simple but vital. They joke and tease their laughter, a stark contrast to the harsh landscape and unforgiving work. At one point, a sudden movement in the brush sends the herd into a panic. The cowboys spring into action, shouting commands and riding hard to stem the tide of the stampede. The thunder of hundreds of hooves shakes the ground as the herd surges forward, a tidal wave of muscle and fear. Your heart races as you struggle to keep up the dust, choking your lungs. The aftermath is a whirlwind of relief and exhaustion. No one is hurt, but the scare serves as a harsh reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control. Jed claps you on the back, his grin tired but genuine. You did good, he says. That's the spirit that keeps us going. As night falls, the cowboys set up camp under a blanket of stars, the crackling fire casting flickering shadows on weathered faces. The air cools and the songs resume softer now, filled with longing and memories. You listen as they sing of lost loves, distant homes, and the endless road ahead. The camaraderie is palpable, a fragile thread weaving individuals into a family forged by shared hardship. You feel the weight of this connection, a reminder that even in the wildest places, human bonds endure. Sleep comes fitfully, the sounds of the herd and the open plains, a constant backdrop. You dream of endless trails, fierce storms, and the cowboys' songs echoing through the night. Tomorrow promises new challenges and the relentless march of the cattle drive. But for now, you rest part of a timeless story etched into the vast, unforgiving landscape of the Wild West. You step onto the land with a quiet reverence, knowing this ground was once alive with the presence of native peoples. Thousands of years of stories, traditions, and lives woven into the soil beneath your feet. The prairie stretches endlessly, dotted with wildflowers nodding gently in the breeze, but beneath its serene beauty lies a history shadowed by upheaval and loss. This is not just a backdrop for your journey. It is a place marked by deep scars and resilient spirits. The landscape holds silent echoes of tribes who once thrived here. The Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and many others whose names and legacies ripple through time. Their villages were nestled along rivers and nestled in valleys where the buffalo roamed freely. Their lives shaped by an intimate relationship with the land and its rhythms. You imagine the sounds of drums, the flicker of firelight on painted faces, the songs carried by wind over endless skies. But as you walk, you notice the signs of change trails worn hard by wagon wheels fences that slice across open grasslands and settlements rising where villages once stood. The advance of settlers and soldiers has carved new borders and erased old ways. The promises of treaties made in ink have often been broken by force, greed, or neglect. You feel the tension between past and present, a silent conflict that lingers like the dust stirred up by passing horses. You meet descendants of these tribes, faces strong and wise, eyes reflecting centuries of endurance. They share stories of ancestors who resisted displacement, who fought to preserve language, culture, and identity amid overwhelming odds. Their voices are both sorrowful and proud, carrying the weight of loss but also the fire of survival. You visit sacred sites, places where the earth seems to breathe with spirit and memory. Here, the land tells stories in the rustle of leaves, the shape of hills, the flow of rivers. You hear about ceremonies that honor the cycles of life and death, of sun and rain, of hunting and harvest. The land itself is a living text written in symbols and rituals that transcend words. The settlers' arrival brought upheaval. You walk past abandoned homesteads, the remnants of dreams both realized and broken. Wood rot slowly paint peels from fences, and the ghosts of past lives linger in empty rooms. You hear from local historians and oral traditions about the complex and often tragic encounters between settlers and native peoples, moments of trade and friendship, shadowed by conflict and forced removal. You listen to the debates among scholars about the nature of these changes. Some describe them as inevitable progress, others as colonization marked by injustice and cultural erasure. The truth is tangled, layered, and difficult to fully grasp. Yet standing here, you feel the invisible threads connecting all who have lived on this land, pain and hope, loss and resilience intertwined. The natural world around you is deeply connected to this history. You watch as buffalo graze in distant fields, their massive forms moving slowly under the wide sky. You learn how native hunters once followed these herds, relying on their rhythms and migrations for survival. You see the wildflowers and grasses that blanket the prairie species tended by generations through controlled burns and careful stewardship. You visit a small museum where artifacts whisper their own stories. Beaded garments glint in soft light. Carved pipes rest on velvet pottery shards, speak of artistry and daily life. Each item is a thread in the tapestry of a culture that refuses to be forgotten. An elder invites you to a gathering where traditional songs rise around a fire. The music pulses with life and history, each note a prayer, a celebration, a remembrance. You feel the vibration in your chest and the gentle warmth on your skin as voices weave stories older than any building around you. The night deepens and the stars emerge, constellations that guided travelers long before railroads and maps. The vast sky feels both eternal and intimate, a reminder of time's endless flow and the smallness of individual lives. You reflect on the ongoing struggles faced by Native communities' efforts to reclaim language, protect sacred sites, and build futures rooted in ancestral knowledge. These challenges echo the past but are met with unwavering spirit. As you prepare to leave, the land feels charged with both sorrow and hope. You carry with you the voices, stories, and lessons of those who walked here, first reminders that the Wild West is not just a tale of conquest, but a living story of survival, resistance, and connection. And as you step forward, you feel the weight and lightness of this history in every breath, every step, every heartbeat. The unrelenting sun beats down mercilessly on your back, its heat wrapping around you like a suffocating blanket that never lets up. Every breath you take tastes of dry dust, and your throat feels parched beyond relief. You stumble forward, boots crunching over cracked, sun-baked earth that seems to stretch endlessly in every direction. The landscape offers no solace, only a vast expanse of brittle grass, scattered scrubby bushes, and the occasional skeletal tree struggling against the scorching heat. You're caught in a place where water is life, yet water is nowhere to be found. You stop for a moment, wiping the sweat from your brow, your vision wavering in the heat haze that shimmers across the horizon. There, just beyond a faint rise, you glimpse the illusion of a river, a mirage born from heat and hope, shimmering and shifting like a dream that dances just out of reach. You want to believe it, but deep down you know better. This is the cruel trickery of the Wild West. Despite the crushing exhaustion, you press on. Every step is heavier than the last, your muscles aching from thirst and sun exposure. Your skin feels tight and raw, coated with fine dust that clings stubbornly no matter how much you brush. The relentless wind kicks up small whirlwinds of sand and debris, stinging your eyes and filling your mouth with grit. You think back to the countless settlers and travelers who ventured into this unforgiving terrain, only to be undone by its harshest truth, the scarcity of water. You recall the stories whispered around campfires, tales of men and women driven mad by thirst, of families forced to abandon their dreams in search of a single precious spring. Some drank from muddy puddles, risking sickness and infection. Others wandered blind until their bodies gave out beneath the merciless sun. Historians still debate the extent to which early pioneers understood the terrain's unforgiving nature. Some argue that a lack of knowledge and preparation sealed the fate of many, while others point to the unpredictable weather and shifting waterways that confounded even the most experienced guides. But no matter the cause, the absence of water was a relentless, often deadly force. You scan the horizon searching for any sign of life, a cluster of green trees, the flight of birds, the faint sound of rushing water. Your eyes settle on a small grove of mesquite and cottonwood, their branches whispering promises of shade and moisture. The sight renews your resolve. You quicken your pace, your heart lifting with cautious hope. Along the way, you stumble upon the remains of an abandoned campsite, cracked clay pots, shattered by time, scraps of fabric faded by sun and wind, and footprints baked into the dust. These remnants speak volumes, telling stories of weary travelers who, like you, sought refuge and sustenance. You wonder if they found what they needed or if they too succumbed to the harshness of the land. Your lips crack and bleed from dehydration. Your tongue feels swollen and heavy. Every step threatens to betray your dwindling strength, but you force yourself onward, aware that giving up here would mean certain death. You rest briefly beneath the scant shade of a mesquite tree, the branches sparse but offering precious relief. The cool earth beneath your palms is a balm grounding you amidst the overwhelming desolation. The sun sinks lower, but its heat lingers stubbornly, refusing to yield to the approaching night. You think about the nights here, cold and unforgiving, a cruel counterpoint to the daytime blaze. The temperature can drop precipitously, and without shelter or warmth, the desert's chill can be as deadly as its heat. As twilight deepens, you finally reach a shallow creek, more trickle than river, its waters pooling in scattered basins carved into the stone. You kneel, cupping your hands and drinking greedily the cool liquid, soothing your burning throat. You know this water is likely tainted, perhaps carrying parasites or bacteria, but the desperation overrides caution. Survival demands compromise. You fill your canteen carefully, mindful to conserve every precious drop. Nearby small clusters of reeds sway gently, and you spot a few hardy frogs hopping among the stones. Life persisting in fragile pockets, despite the harshness surrounding it. You watch a family of rabbits dart nervously through the underbrush, their fur dusted with the day's ash. The night settles in quietly, the stars emerging like countless watchful eyes in the vast sky. The constellations that guided generations of travelers twinkle overhead, their steady presence a comforting reminder of the world's enduring cycles. The Milky Way arches gracefully, a ribbon of light stretching from horizon to horizon. You gather driftwood and dry grass to build a small fire, its crackling warmth a shield against the desert's chill. The flames dance softly, casting flickering shadows that play across the rocks and trees. You sit close, drawing comfort from the fire's glow, and the gentle night sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant howl of coyotes, the chirping of crickets. Your thoughts drift to those who lived here long before the settlers arrived, the native peoples, who understood this land's rhythms and secrets. They knew where to find hidden springs, how to read the signs of rain and drought, and how to live in harmony with the harsh environment. Their knowledge was born of centuries of experience and reverence. You think about the settlers who followed, many unprepared for the merciless conditions. Their dreams of fertile farmland and prosperous homesteads were often shattered by drought and scarcity. The dust storms that swept through the plains were as much a threat as fire or bandits. Yet despite these challenges, communities persisted, built on resilience and determination. You remember stories of water-finders scouts who sought underground springs by reading the plants and soil. Some relied on the migration patterns of birds or the calls of frogs to locate hidden water sources. Others learned to collect dew or use primitive irrigation methods to stretch scarce supplies. As you sit by your fire, you feel the weight of these histories settle around you. The land is both beautiful and brutal, indifferent to human hopes and struggles. Survival here requires not just strength and skill, but patience, respect, and a deep understanding of nature's cycles. The night deepens, and the cool air seeps into your bones. You pull your cloak tighter, grateful for its warmth. Sleep comes slowly, your body exhausted, but your mind alert to the wilderness sounds. You dream of flowing rivers and lush meadows of the cool, sweet water that sustains all life. You dream of the small moments that make survival possible, the taste of water on a hot day, the shade of a lone tree, the comfort of a fire's warmth. Morning will bring new challenges, the relentless sun, the scarcity of water, the vastness of the plains. But for now, beneath the endless sky, you find a moment of peace, a fragile truce with the Wild West's harsh realities. Survival is a delicate balance, a dance between hope and despair, endurance and surrender. And as you close your eyes, you carry within you the strength of those who came before and the will to keep moving forward. The sun dips low on the horizon, casting long shadows that stretch across the dusty streets and worn wooden buildings of the town. The day's heat begins to ease, replaced by a cooler, more restless evening. You find yourself drawn toward the local saloon, a hub of activity, laughter, and as you've come to learn, a fair share of trouble. The door creaks open under your hand, and you step inside, the mingling scents of whiskey, tobacco, and sweat enveloping you like an old familiar cloak. Inside, the air is thick with smoke and tension. Card tables are scattered about, players hunched over hands of poker and faro, their faces shadowed beneath wide-brimmed hats. The clink of coins and the slap of cards against felt mingle with the murmur of conversations and the occasional burst of laughter. But beneath the lively surface, you sense an undercurrent of suspicion, strategy, and risk. This isn't a place for the faint of heart. You take a seat near the bar, nodding to the barkeep, a grizzled man with a scar running down one cheek who slides a glass of harsh whiskey your way without a word. The liquid burns as it slides down your throat, a reminder that comfort here comes in small, fiery doses. You glance around, observing the players and patrons, each with their own story and stake in the game unfolding. At a nearby table, a group of men are deep in a heated game. Eyes dart, fingers twitch, and subtle signals pass back and forth, cheating. Here is as much a part of the game as the cards themselves. You hear a whisper about marked decks and sleight of hand about players who never lose unless they want to, and the dangers of calling out a cheater in a room full of gunslingers. Historians still debate how widespread cheating was in frontier gambling halls. Some argue it was rampant, with professionals preying on the unwary, while others suggest a rough code of honor, limited outright deceit among regulars. Either way, the tension is real. One wrong move, one false accusation, and a friendly game can quickly spiral into violence. You're soon drawn into conversation by a sharp-eyed gambler named Silas, whose reputation precedes him. He warns you to watch your back and your bets, sharing tales of fortunes won and lost, of bluffs called too soon, and of deals cut in whispers. His voice is low and measured, each word dripping with caution and experience. As the night progresses, the stakes grow higher. The room's energy shifts, laughter gives way to silence, eyes narrow, and every hand dealt carries weight far beyond the value of chips on the table. You notice a man's hand twitching near his revolver, a subtle reminder that in this world, money and life often hang in the same balance. You play cautiously, aware that every bet is a risk. You learn the signs, the tells of nervous players, the confident glances, the subtle shifts in posture. You begin to understand that success here is as much about reading people as it is about the luck of the draw. Midway through the evening, a dispute erupts. Accusations fly, voices raise, and hands move toward weapons. The barkeep steps in swiftly, his voice commanding and steady, diffusing the tension with practiced ease. You realize that peace in this place is fragile, maintained by those who understand the deadly dance of ego, pride, and survival. As the night wears on, the saloon reveals its many faces, joy, desperation, camaraderie, and danger, all intertwined. The music from a battered piano weaves through the air, its melancholy notes a counterpoint to the clatter and clamor. A woman sings softly, her voice carrying stories of love and loss, hope and hardship. You leave the saloon with a mix of relief and exhilaration, the cool night air a balm against the day's heat and the night's intensity. The Wild West, you realize, is a place where fortunes are made and lost, where every card dealt can change a life, and where survival means playing your hand wisely. The road ahead is uncertain, but for tonight you've glimpsed the complex world beneath the dust and gunsmoke, a world where luck, skill, and courage are forever entwined. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the dusty trail as you approach the encampment of a traveling medicine show, a floating island of color and life in an otherwise stark landscape. Brightly painted wagons and fluttering flags frame a large tent, its canvas worn and patched but still proudly billowing in the dry breeze. The faint strains of fiddle music mix with the chatter of a gathering crowd, drawing you closer with a strange mixture of curiosity and skepticism. The air is thick with the mingled aromas of roasted meat, burnt sugar, and something herbal and pungent, the unmistakable scent of the miracle tonic being hawked with enthusiastic flair. Children dart between the legs of adults, their faces alight with excitement, while weathered settlers lean in hoping for a reprieve from the relentless hardships of frontier life. At the center of this spectacle stands Professor Merriweather, a man whose teeth flash in a grin far too wide for his gaunt face. His eyes twinkle with the practiced charm of a man who has mastered the art of persuasion, and his voice carries easily over the crowd, weaving tales of miraculous cures and unstoppable vitality. Behind him, a dancing bear, tethered but majestic, sways rhythmically to the music, eliciting gasps and applause. You listen as Merriweather extols the virtues of his tonic, an elixir he claims can cure everything from scurvy and rheumatism to heartbreak and bad luck. The liquid sloshes in the glass dark and viscous, promising salvation in a single sip. His stories are embroidered with references to exotic herbs, ancient secrets, and the endorsement of dignitaries from far-off cities. His sales pitch is polished, rehearsed, and utterly captivating, yet beneath the charm lies an undercurrent of doubt. You recall the countless snake oil salesmen who roamed the frontier, peddling dubious remedies to desperate souls. Some genuinely believed in their concoctions. Others were skilled charlatans preying on hope and ignorance. Historians continue to debate the true efficacy of these medicines, but what is undeniable is the role they played in the social fabric of the West, bringing people together, offering distraction and sometimes comfort. You step forward as Merriweather offers free samples, the crowd parting to allow you access. The taste is sharp and bitter with a fiery warmth that spreads through your chest and stomach, leaving a lingering, tingling sensation. It's hard to say whether the effect is medicinal or merely the burn of whiskey disguised as cure, but the warmth is welcome in the cool evening air. As you sip, you watch the crowd's reactions. Some grimace and cough. Others smile as if tasting hope itself. Among the attendees are a few hardened cowboys, their faces lined with years of sun and dust, who nod in approval, and a woman clutching a child, eyes filled with weary optimism. The tonic is more than a drink. It's a symbol, a ritual, a beacon of possibility in a land defined by uncertainty. Nearby, the dancing bear performs slow, hypnotic circles, its heavy paws pounding rhythmically on the packed earth. Despite its captivity, there's a certain dignity in its movements, a reminder of the wildness that lies just beyond the edges of civilization. The bear's presence is both entertainment and metaphor, the tension between freedom and control, nature and human imposition. As twilight deepens, the campfires flicker to life, casting golden glows on faces, animated with stories, laughter, and song. The performers gather sharing jokes and tales of their travels, their voices weaving a tapestry of human resilience and joy. Music fills the air, a mix of fiddles, banjos, and voices rising in harmony, binding the scattered souls of the frontier into a fragile community. You find yourself drawn into the circle, the stories and songs, stirring something deep within. Tales of love lost and found, of battles fought and survived, of dreams chased across endless plains. These narratives are the lifeblood of the West carried forward by those who endure. You reflect on the paradox embodied by the medicine show, the blend of illusion and truth commerce, and community hope and exploitation. In a land where doctors were scarce and remedies crude, these traveling shows offered more than cures. They offered connection and meaning. Night settles over the prairie, and you lie beneath the vast sky, the stars like distant fires guiding your thoughts. The tonic's warmth lingers, a reminder that survival is as much about spirit as it is about flesh. The Wild West is a place where stories heal as much as medicine, where faith in the unseen can be as powerful as any elixir. As you drift asleep, the music and laughter of the camp mingle with the whispers of the wind, carrying promises of resilience and renewal in a land both harsh and beautiful. The homestead stretches out before you, a patch of earth wrested from the relentless wilderness, fenced with weathered timber and dotted with the skeletal remains of crops struggling to survive. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting long shadows that creep across fields, cracked and thirsty from months of drought. This is the frontier dream, laid bare, a life of hard work, hope, and unyielding challenge. You step onto the dry soil, boots crunching against the parched ground, and take a deep breath of the dust-laden air. The wind carries a faint scent of sagebrush and something faintly metallic like old horseshoes left to rust. Around you, the landscape is a mosaic of untamed wilderness and human endeavor trees, scarred by axes, abandoned plows, rusting in the sun, and the distant hum of a windmill turning slowly against the sky. The homestead is more than a house. It's a statement of determination, a fragile fortress against the elements and isolation. Yet beneath this resolve lies a tangle of broken promises, promises made by governments and land speculators, promises of fertile fields and steady water, promises that often dissolved like morning mist under the harsh sun. You meet the homesteaders' families who arrived with dreams as wide as the prairie, clutching deeds and hopes in equal measure. Their faces are weathered, their hands calloused from endless labor. They speak of backbreaking days spent plowing rocky soil, planting crops that struggle to take root, and battling pest drought and loneliness. You listen to stories of neighbors who once worked side by side sharing tools, meals, and burdens, only to fall into disputes over water rights, fence lines, and debts. The isolation breeds both community and conflict, friendships forged in hardship and rivalries born from desperation. The infrastructure is rudimentary, a well here, a corral there, sometimes a barn that has seen better days. Electricity is a distant dream replaced by oil lamps and candlelight. Water must be hauled from miles away or drawn painstakingly from wells that sometimes run dry. Every task requires effort measured in sweat and time, with few shortcuts and no guarantees. You observe the crops stunted and patchy, their leaves curled from heat and thirst. The soil is stubborn, refusing to yield easily to the plow or seed. You see the scars of erosion where wind and rain have carried away precious topsoil, leaving barren patches behind. The battle for fertile land is constant and often losing. You speak with a homesteader named Clara, whose sharp eyes and steady hands belie a spirit unbroken by the hardship she faces. She tells you of the seasons unpredictable and unforgiving, of winters that freeze the earth solid and summers that scorch it beyond recognition. She shares how every harvest is a gamble, every planting a prayer. Her husband, a quiet man with a weathered face, adds stories of wild animals threatening livestock rustlers, stealing what little they own, and the never-ending struggle to make ends meet. They talk about the isolation, how the nearest town is days away, how help is scarce, and how community gatherings are treasured moments of connection. You learn that government promises like the Homestead Act offered land and opportunity, but often failed to deliver the resources and support settlers needed. Many homesteaders faced legal battles over land titles while others abandoned their claims out of sheer exhaustion and despair. The dream of owning land and building a future was often shattered by harsh reality. Yet amidst these challenges, you see resilience. Children play in dusty yards, learning the skills of survival from their parents. Neighbors gather for barn raisings and harvest festivals, sharing stories and strength. The land, though harsh, is home. You reflect on the paradox of the frontier, the promise of freedom and prosperity, shadowed by hardship and loss. The homestead is a symbol of hope and determination, but also of struggle and sacrifice. It is a testament to human endurance in the face of overwhelming odds. As dusk falls, you sit with the homesteaders around a fire, the flames casting flickering light on tired but hopeful faces. The stars emerge overhead, vast and eternal, reminding you of the cycles of life and the enduring spirit of those who claim this land. You understand that the frontier is not just a place, but a state of being where every day is a test, every harvest a victory, and every sunrise a new chance to endure. And as you prepare to move on, you carry with you the stories of those who built lives here, etched into the land and your memory forever. The women of the Wild West are a force both formidable and often overlooked, carving out lives of strength, resilience, and ingenuity in a land that demanded everything. As you journey through dusty towns and sprawling ranches, you encounter them, not as mere background figures, but as pillars holding up the rugged frontier world. Ranchers, outlaws, madams, mothers, and pioneers whose stories ripple with courage and tenacity. You meet Martha, a rancher who commands her sprawling property with a steady hand and a sharp eye. Her days begin before dawn riding the range to check on cattle, mending fences, and negotiating deals with neighboring ranches. She is as skilled on horseback as any cowboy, her voice carrying authority across the wind-whipped plains. Martha's story is one of inheritance and innovation, a woman who took over her late husband's ranch and transformed it into a thriving enterprise despite skepticism and obstacles. Her hands bear the calluses of hard labor, her face sun-kissed and lined with years of weather and worry. Yet her eyes gleam with determination, reflecting a spirit that refuses to be diminished. She tells you about the challenges she's faced, men who doubted her capabilities, the relentless demands of the land, and the constant threat of drought and rustlers. But she also speaks of triumphs, cattle drives completed, calves raised against the odds, and a legacy she is proud to pass on. In a bustling frontier town, you encounter Eliza, a madam who runs one of the most respected establishments in the region. Her reputation is both feared and admired. She wields influence behind a curtain of scandal and propriety. Eliza's story is one of survival and savvy, a woman who navigated the perilous social landscape to carve out a place of power and security for herself and the women under her protection. She speaks candidly about the prejudices she faces, the alliances she forges, and the delicate balance of control and compassion she maintains. Eliza's establishment is more than a business. It is a sanctuary for women seeking refuge from the harsh realities outside. She advocates fiercely for their safety and dignity in a world that often denies them both. Through her, you glimpse a different kind of frontier justice, one where strength takes many forms and survival demands complexity. You hear whispers of notorious outlaws like Calamity Jane women who defied societal norms and challenged the violence and lawlessness of the West head on. These figures are part myth, part legend, but their courage and recklessness inspire both awe and caution. Their stories remind you that the Wild West was a place where the lines of gender were blurred by necessity and rebellion. At a small homestead, you meet Sarah, a mother raising children alone after her husband's untimely death. Her days are a relentless cycle of chores, cooking, cleaning, tending to crops and livestock, all while keeping her family fed and safe. Sarah's resilience shines in the face of isolation and hardship. She shares how she learned to shoot and ride out of necessity, how neighbors band together to support one another, and how community ties are vital for survival. The women you meet share a common thread, an unwavering spirit that refuses to be broken by circumstance. They manage businesses, run farms, raise families, and defend their homes. Their lives are woven into the fabric of frontier society, shaping the culture and economy in ways often ignored by history. You observe the quiet strength in their interactions, how they pass down knowledge, teach children, and maintain traditions, even amid the chaos of the frontier. They embody a blend of toughness and tenderness, balancing harsh realities with hope and care. Historians still debate the extent of women's influence on the development of the West, but there's no doubt that their contributions were vital. From voting rights activists to ranch owners, their impact resonates through time. As night falls, you gather around a fire with several women, their faces illuminated by flickering flames. They share stories of love and loss, of triumph and tragedy, of laughter and tears. Their voices weave a rich tapestry of experience, resilience, and unyielding hope. You feel privileged to witness their stories, understanding that the Wild West was not just a man's world. It was a complex, often dangerous place where women shaped history in ways both visible and hidden. And as the stars emerge overhead, you carry their stories with you, reminders of strength, courage, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The morning mist hangs heavy over the ridge as you mount your horse, the cold bite of dawn sharpening your senses. Today is not just another day on the frontier. It is the day you accompany a posse on a critical mission, a pursuit that will test not only your endurance but your understanding of justice in the Wild West. The air is thick with anticipation, the faint scent of pine mingling with dust and sweat. A reminder that nature and human drama intertwine endlessly here. You join the sheriff and a small band of riders, a mix of hardened lawmen, seasoned trackers, and local volunteers, all unified by a common goal: to capture an outlaw who has become the embodiment of lawlessness in these parts. The man is reputed to be cunning and ruthless, slipping through the fingers of justice time and time again. Stories swirl about his exploits: stagecoach robberies, cattle rustling, and deadly shootouts, each tale more harrowing than the last. As the posse moves out, the rhythmic clatter of hooves against the dirt trail blends with whispered strategies and cautious conversations. The leader, the sheriff, rides with a calm authority born from years of navigating the delicate balance between law and survival. His eyes scan the horizon, searching for signs: the faintest disturbance in the brush, the broken twig, the crushed grass that might reveal the outlaw's path. You learn quickly that tracking in this land is an art form as much as a necessity. The desert's harshness is deceptive. Beneath the surface, countless clues tell a story to those patient and perceptive enough to read them. Every footprint, every bent branch, every fleeting scent carries meaning. The group rides in silence, each member acutely aware that one wrong move could cost lives. The terrain shifts from open plains to rugged foothills, the landscape growing more challenging as you pursue your quarry. The sun climbs steadily, intensifying the heat and draining strength. Water is scarce, and every drop carried is precious. You reflect on the history of posse groups hastily assembled from townsfolk to enforce order in a land where formal law enforcement was sparse. Some were noble and just, others less so, veering into vigilantism and personal vendettas. Historians still debate the ethical complexities of frontier justice, whether it upheld fairness or perpetuated cycles of violence and oppression. As the day wears on, tensions rise within the posse. Not everyone trusts each other fully. Whispers of hidden agendas and rivalries circulate. You notice glances exchanged, hands lingering near holstered guns, the thin veneer of unity cracking under pressure. Survival here demands not just strength, but shrewdness and alliances carefully weighed. At a midday break, you gather near a dry creek bed. The cracked earth beneath your feet contrasts sharply with the weary faces of your companions. You share sparse rations, hardtack jerky, and lukewarm coffee, but conversation is muted, each rider lost in thought or scanning the horizon for danger. One rider, a grizzled veteran named Cole, shares a tale of a previous chase gone awry. He speaks of ambushes, betrayals, and the razor-thin margin between hunter and hunted. His voice carries the weight of experience and caution, reminding you that the outlaw you pursue is not just a name, but a cunning adversary. The terrain grows thorny and treacherous as you near a dense thicket rumored to be the outlaw's hideout. The posse slows, senses heightened. Every shadow seems to conceal a threat, every rustle a warning. The wind carries scents of smoke and leather, stirring memories of past encounters and battles fought under similar skies. You find yourself reflecting on the nature of justice in this frontier world, how it blends law, vengeance, survival, and community enforcement. The lines blur between right and wrong, especially when survival demands swift and often brutal action. The posse's mission embodies this tension. They seek justice but carry with them the risk of judgment turned to brutality. As evening falls, the posse camps in a clearing, the flickering firelight casting long shadows. Plans are laid for the final approach at dawn. The night is alive with whispered prayers, restless shifting, and the distant cry of coyotes. Sleep is elusive, replaced by adrenaline and anticipation. Before dawn, the posse moves out, riding with quiet determination. You spot fresh tracks leading into a narrow canyon, the terrain perfect for an ambush. The tension is palpable. Every man's hand tightens on his weapon. The silence is broken only by the soft murmur of commands and the steady rhythm of horses' hooves. Suddenly, movement, a flash of color, a gunshot. The outlaw's posse emerges from cover, firing rapidly. The air fills with smoke and the sharp report of firearms. Chaos erupts as riders scatter, bullets zing past, and horses rear in panic. You cling to your mount, heart, hammering, eyes sharp. The skirmish is brutal and swift. Shots are exchanged, men shout orders and warnings, and the landscape is scarred by the battle. You see comrades fall and rise, some limping, others firing from the saddle with deadly precision. The outlaw fights fiercely, desperate to escape capture or death. After tense moments that feel like hours, the outlaw's forces break and flee, leaving him isolated. The posse closes in cautiously, guns drawn and ready. The outlaw's eyes blaze with defiance as he realizes his time is up. The sheriff steps forward, commanding surrender. The moment is heavy with significance. The capture marks the triumph of law, but also the costs of frontier justice. You witness the complexities, the relief, the sorrow, the lingering questions about mercy and vengeance. The ride back to town is subdued, the posse carrying the weight of the day's violence and victory. The outlaw is bound and guarded, a living symbol of the fragile order imposed on the wild. As the town's lights come into view, you feel the tension shift, relief mingled with the knowledge that justice here is never simple. and survival often demands sacrifice. You realize that the Wild West is a place of contradictions where freedom and law clash, where courage meets cruelty, and where every story is written in shades of gray. The sun sets behind the hills as you dismount the day's journey, leaving its mark on your body and soul. You carry with you the lessons of pursuit, justice, and the complex dance of survival in a land that never forgets. Tonight, beneath the vast star-strewn sky, you rest knowing tomorrow will bring new challenges, new stories, and the relentless call of the frontier. The first light of dawn creeps gently over the horizon, painting the sky with soft hues of pink, lavender, and gold. The world feels quiet, still holding its breath in that fragile moment before the sun fully rises and the day begins anew. You stand alone on a ridge overlooking the vast expanse of the frontier, the land stretching endlessly before you. Rolling hills, winding rivers, clusters of trees whispering secrets in the morning breeze. This is the last chapter of your journey through the Wild West, and as the cool air fills your lungs, you find yourself drawn into a deep reflection on everything you've lived through, witnessed, and learned. The silence is profound here, broken only by the distant calls of birds and the rustling of leaves. You feel the weight of solitude, but it's a comforting kind, the quiet that comes after a storm, the calm after chaos. You breathe in deeply, tasting the earth, the sky, and something more intangible, the essence of this wild land that has shaped every step you've taken. As you stand on the ridge, your mind begins to unravel the countless threads of your journey, weaving together the moments, the people, and the lessons that have defined your time here. Each memory is vivid: the burning heat of the midday sun, the biting chill of desert nights, the thunderous roar of prairie fires, the crackling campfires beneath star-strewn skies. You recall the faces of those you met, cowboys hardened by years in the saddle, their eyes sharp and weary. Women whose strength and resolve quietly shaped the backbone of frontier society. Settlers driven by hope and desperation, carving lives from unforgiving soil, and native peoples whose deep connection to the land runs like an undercurrent through all history here. Their stories are etched in your heart, their laughter, their struggles, their quiet moments of grace. The land itself feels alive beneath your feet, a mosaic of contrast. The endless prairie where the grass sways like a golden sea, the rugged mountains, their peaks piercing the sky, the slow rivers that wind through valleys carrying the lifeblood of this harsh place. You understand now that this land is not just a backdrop, but a character in its own right, shaping and being shaped by those who call it home. You think of freedom, the myth, the promise, the complicated reality. For some, freedom meant roaming these open spaces untethered and wild. For others, it was the hope of owning land, building a home, and forging a future. Yet freedom here was often tangled with conflict, survival, and sacrifice. You see how the frontier was a place of negotiation between man and nature law, and lawlessness, hope, and harshness. Justice, too, reveals itself as a complex dance. The swift gunfights and makeshift courts, the uneasy truces and the harsh punishments, all part of a system both fragile and fierce. You remember moments of mercy, moments of cruelty, and the endless gray between? Justice here was human, flawed, and fiercely contested. Your thoughts turn to resilience, the quality that carried so many through drought, fire, flood, and violence. You recall the tireless work of homesteaders, the steadfastness of ranchers, the courage of women who held families and communities together. Resilience is the thread that binds the stories you carry. You think about community, the fragile but vital connections that sustained lives. The gatherings around campfires, the shared meals, the whispered prayers, the songs sung beneath vast skies. Community was both shield and balm, a reminder that even in the wildest places, humans crave connection and belonging. The night sky above you stretches wide and endless, a tapestry of stars that has guided countless generations before you. You find solace in its constancy, a reminder that time flows onward, that the stories of the West are part of a greater human narrative. As the sun rises fully casting golden light on the land, you feel a quiet gratitude. Gratitude for the challenges that shaped you, the people who touched your life, and the land that taught you about strength and beauty. The Wild West is no longer just a place, it is a story written in your heart. You step forward ready to face whatever lies ahead, carrying with you the legacy of survival, courage, and hope. The journey ends here, but its echoes will resonate within you always. And as you walk into the new day, you whisper a promise to remember to honor and to carry the spirit of the Wild West with you wherever the road leads. As the night deepens and your eyes grow heavy, let the vastness of the Wild West gently fade into a soft, comforting memory. Imagine the wide open skies now cloaked in stars, their quiet light spilling softly over rolling hills and whispering plains. The day's struggles, the dust and heat, the challenges and triumphs all settle down like a slow, peaceful breath. Feel the cool night air brush against your skin, carrying the faint scent of sage and pine, soothing and steady. Around you, the earth hums a quiet lullaby, the gentle rustling of leaves, the distant call of an owl, and the whisper of a breeze weaving through the grass. This is a moment suspended in time where worry slips away and calm takes its place. Know that the stories you've journeyed through tonight of courage, hardship, resilience, and hope are not just tales of the past. They live on in the quiet strength within you. Each heartbeat echoes the spirit of those who walked before, who faced the wild with determination and heart. So as you drift toward rest, let your mind settle into the peace of this vast, enduring land. Wherever you are, may this calm fill your dreams with gentle wonders and curious adventures. I'll be here with another story for you tomorrow night, ready to guide you through new worlds and whispered histories. Good night and sweet dreams.